Hi, Aaliyah Fulton, host of Early Career Unlock, where you learn three pieces of advice from industry experts. Now, for folks who've been in the workforce for a while, interviewing can be intimidating, even more so for students who have no work experience. And how do you ace an interview? So today I have Troy. He's a university recruiting manager from BPM LLP, and he's going to offer three pieces of advice on how to ace an interview here on Early Career Unlocked. Today we have Troy from BPM LLP, who's going to offer three pieces of advice about interviewing, especially in accounting. So welcome, Troy.
Hello?
Before you tell us about interviewing, especially in accounting, we'd love to know more about you.
Sure. So, Troy Steece, I head up university recruiting for BPM LLP. I've been in the talent acquisition space for going on 16 years, and most of that has been recruiting college students. So I've been not only in the financial services industry, but I've also been in, the corporate industry as well, and recruited students from business to engineering to sales, and going on and on. It's been a really fun career so far.
Fun fact, Troy and I used to work together at another company, and hands down, you are one of the best managers I've ever worked with. Interviewing and interviewing students and accounting. Tell us a little bit about how you're knowledgeable on this topic.
I started my career actually in public accounting on the audit side. And so I had a little bit of experience there before I moved into talent acquisition. So when I did that, I was recruiting people for the job that I was actually doing. And so that really helped when I was going through the process of learning how to recruit people. In terms of knowledgeable, I guess I would point to the 15 years of experience, 16 years of experience I've got. I've probably seen over 5,000 resumes. I've probably interviewed close to 2,500 students over my time, and I've seen amazing interviews. I've seen students struggle, and what I'd like to talk about are just a few things that I noticed over my years of doing this that have students stand out from the crowd.
Yes, and I have seen you interact with students and the way you would just pause and just offer advice. So I know that you really do care about helping students.
Yeah,
So when it
absolutely.
comes to interviewing, especially in accounting, what three pieces of advice would you like to offer?
Yeah. The first one is, and this really has to do with showing your interest. Um, in the organization you're interviewing with. But the first one is researching the company and understanding why you want to work there. Most organizations are going to ask, so what got you to apply to our role? Why us? And having a good understanding. I met some people at a career fair. I really liked what they had to say. I love the career opportunities here. I talked to a former intern. Um, I love what you guys are doing about being socially responsible in X, Y, and Z. Whatever the case is, but do your research, get to know this company that you're interviewing with, and have at least two or three reasons for why you're interested in their organization. Um, Make them specific to the organization and not just the industry. That way, you'll show them that, hey, I'm not just interested in getting into whatever it is, public accounting. I'm really interested in your firm, and here are the reasons why. The next one, most organizations still, I think, lean on behavioral interview questions. Sure, they'll go through your resume, they'll talk about your work experience, what kind of involvement you've had on campus, but almost always, at some point, they're going to ask a behavioral question or two, or maybe even three. And a behavioral interview question, if you're unfamiliar, is really about give me an example of a time when, and I'll fill in the blank here, you overcame adversity. You were able to solve a complex problem. You worked with a team that wasn't getting along, or you worked with a challenging team. So, what we're looking for when we're asking those questions is we want to see how you handled that situation because past performance is the best indicator of how you're going to do in the future. So if you could give us an example of how you overcame adversity, um, it's showing us that you probably have a good chance of doing it in the future because you've done it in the past. So, when answering those questions, it's good to remember these three things: the situation, what happened? So,
Hmm.
what was the deal? The action you took, what were the actions that you took to remedy this situation or work through this situation? And then what was the conclusion? What was the outcome? What was the result? And really laying it out like that. And most of these types of questions will start with, can you give me an example of a time when dot dot dot? So those would be, I would do some research. You can look up behavioral interview questions. There's lists of hundreds of them. um, but with that said, I would think about not your answer, but think about just those examples. Just have those examples in the back. Oh, okay, yeah, a time I overcame it. Oh, yeah, that in that class or whatever the case was, or a time I worked with a group that wasn't functioning well. Oh, yeah, it was a time in my, I was vice president of Beta Alpha Psi and da 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 da. So just think of the examples so that you can pull them up and talk about them during your interview.
And you know what I like about that point too, and you were talking about student organizations, is that students look at these questions and go, well, I don't have real work experience to explain to these, these adversities, but it's not about the work experience, about life experience.
Yes.
It could be a student organization, it could be a project you worked on with other classmates. All of this is great experience you can draw from.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're right on point. And yeah, it's a great way. Any example, whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's extracurricular activities, we, the organizations, are looking for the best example you've got. That's it. We want to see a demonstration of the behavior we're looking for. The third thing um, is at the conclusion of the interview, make sure you have some well thought out questions for your interviewer. This kind of ties back to number one, which is research the organization that you're going to be interviewing with. But during that research, you could come up with some questions. Hey, I noticed that you guys are heavily involved with such and such. Can you tell me more about that? Or what are some of the things that the interns do from a job standpoint during their internship? Or you could go on and on and on with questions. What you don't want to do is end the interview and say, nope, I don't have any.
And we do
That
hear that from time to
we hear
time.
that, and what you're saying is, I am really not all that interested in your organization, um, and please don't select me. And obviously, you don't want that if you're interviewing. So think of some questions. Ask the interview. What do you love the most about working at the place you're interviewing? What's something you'd like to change about the place you're interviewing? Um, what's something you've seen interns maybe struggle with when they come on board, or what is a successful internship or entry level employee, what does that look like? There's so many great questions you can ask. Please do some research here and write out those questions. I love it when a student says, when I say, so I'm done with my questions. Do you have any questions for me? And they're like, yeah, I actually wrote some down. I go, oh yes, that means they did their homework, they're really interested, and it's enough to where they've actually written it down and they're taking notes with my answers. That shows real determination, and it's a small thing you can do to separate yourself from other interviewees, as opposed to saying, when someone asks, do you have any questions for me, and you go, what's your company culture like? It's that's it's good that you asked a question, but it doesn't seem like it was very well thought out. So make sure you've got those questions jotted down. It'll go a long way with your interviewer.
I think those are three excellent pieces of advice. And not just for accounting, I mean, just the topics that you talked about could apply to anyone who's interviewing with any company.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that it really does work across any and all industries. When you're interviewing, again, when you're on campus, you're interviewing for an internship or a co-op or a full-time role, really think of those three things before you get into an interview.
Absolutely. Well, just to recap, three tips from Troy today would be one, research the company and why you want to work there. 2, think about answers to behavioral questions. And 3, have well thought out questions for your interviewer. Just to wrap things up, Troy, any last piece of advice you would like to offer to our viewers?
I think this is kind of, there's a duality with this piece of advice. So I would say, um, you know, make sure make sure when you are going through this process that you have the cleanest, most up to date, most full and robust resume that you can possibly put together. And the reason I say that is we're still very much in a virtual environment. Yes, we are going back to campus. My firm's been to campus almost 50 times this fall, which has been awesome. Um, but interviews are still taking place virtually with a lot of organizations. We don't have quite the number of opportunities to meet people in person. A lot of campus initial interviews aren't being done at the career center like they used to do almost always back 4 or 5 years ago. A lot of this is done virtually, and so sometimes all you've got is your representation is that resume, and you're competing with hundreds, more often thousands of applicants who've submitted their resumes. You want yours to stand out. Make sure yours is clean, it's full, the font's the same. It really stands out when I look at it on paper, and I can very easily see, okay, here's where you go to school, here's your major, here's when you're graduating, here's some courses you've taken, there's your work experience, here's your involvement on campus, and here's some maybe extracurricular or other highlights about you. That is going to go a long way with determining whether or not you're selected. So please have a look at your resume, send it to some friends, take it to the career center, have them look at it. It's a difference maker. It's a difference between getting an interview sometimes and not getting an interview.
Absolutely. And the best person who knows you is yourself. And sometimes your best marketing material is your resume. Troy, this has been wonderful and great advice. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you come back soon because I know you have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience to offer advice to students and a lot of range of different topics. But I really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
I'm going to link your company's career site in the description below so that anyone who's interested in future opportunities with your company could go ahead and apply.
Thank you.
And then to our viewers, if you want to know more about career advice, subscribe. 3 tips from industry experts every week here on Early Career Unlocked.